A few months back, I had something happen that probably would have surprised me a year ago, but doesn't really today. A reverse mortgage prospect told me they had taken the loan options I gave them and put it into AI. They chatted with it and asked it questions. They compared the scenarios I gave them. They used it to evaluate whether the strategy I was recommending in the first position actually made the most sense, or perhaps if one of the other options was better. And then it happened again, and then it happened again. And now, as a loan officer, you might be hearing this and think, oh, well, that's a little terrifying. When they first said it, I kind of was too, but then the conversation evolved, and I actually now have the opposite reaction, because in all three cases, the AI came back and said essentially the same thing that I did. So I was pretty glad for it, because I don't think AI is the threat to our profession that some people think that it is. I actually found that it reinforced the analysis and strategy, and it helped increase trust because the AI and I were in alignment for the client's best interest, meeting multiple goals. I do think it's changing what's making us valuable, though. And I think that change is happening faster than most of us realize.
At Atlas Valuation, we approach the appraisal process differently. For us, it's not about being the biggest. Instead, we take pride in providing the very best to our chosen clients and emphasize delivering a superior borrower experience, unrivaled service, competitive pricing, and prompt delivery. To learn more, visit atlasvms.com or call or click on the banner below this video.
Hi, I'm Christina Harmes, certified reverse mortgage professional, and today I want to talk to you about what I believe is becoming a really important competitive advantage for us as humans as AI evolves the mortgage industry. And surprisingly, coming from me, now it's not just knowing more. Yes, of course you have to know your stuff, but it's emotional intelligence, or EI. As information becomes easier to access, the human connection is way more valuable than people are realizing that it is. For a long time, one of our biggest advantages as mortgage professionals was specialized knowledge. We knew the guidelines, we understand the calculations, we understand the products, the strategies, the nuances. Some of us really understand the underwriting situation. And consumers needed us to access all of that information. They don't need us for that as much anymore. Today, a homeowner can sit at their kitchen table at 3 o'clock in the morning if they want and ask AI, how does a reverse mortgage work? How much can I qualify for at my age? What happens if I want to move in 5 years? Or should I take a line of credit or some cash or a monthly payment? Should I pay off that bill with it or not? And can you compare these loan options for me? And in a matter of seconds, they can get a fairly sophisticated answer that is a lot of the time pretty correct. Now, is AI always right? No, absolutely not. And that's actually one of the reasons I think technical expertise still matters tremendously. As reverse professionals, we need to know our business well enough to recognize when technology gets it wrong, as it sometimes does. But the larger point here is that the knowledge gap between the professional and the consumer is shrinking. And I think we need to be paying attention to that. Because if our entire value proposition is just, I know the information and you don't, well, that's changing rapidly. So the question now becomes, if information is increasingly available to everybody, what makes a great reverse mortgage professional valuable? I believe the answer is our ability to understand human beings and the connection we create while sitting in front of them, guiding them through this process. Think about the conversations that you and I have every single day with homeowners. A homeowner may ask, do you think I should get a reverse mortgage? It's a pretty big question. On the surface, it sounds like a financial question. And of course, there are financial aspects to answer that question we need to know and need to answer. But there's way more to that question. We need to understand the numbers, the home, the loan structure, their income, their assets, their goals, their familial situation, their long-term plans, as well as the consequences of doing this. But underneath that question, there's often an entirely different conversation happening that you might miss. What they really might be asking is, am I making a mistake? Am I going to regret this decision? Or is this the best decision I can ever make? What are my kids going to think? Should I talk to them about it? Did I fail because I need to use my home equity? Am I going to be okay in 10, 20 years? And can I actually afford to stay in the home that I love? Those aren't product questions. Those are human questions, and questions most people aren't clearly understanding well enough to actually verbalize. We have to understand that. And I think that's where emotional intelligence matters so much in our business. People do need accurate information, but before they can make any sort of decision, which they generally make on emotion, they need to feel heard. They need to know that the person helping them understands what's at stake for them. And especially in reverse mortgages, we're rarely ever just talking about a loan. We're talking about the rest of their life, often the largest asset that they have, and structuring it properly to meet their goals of independence, family legacy concerns, their long-term health, their security, how to handle the grief and fear if and when it comes through. And sometimes the realization that the retirement didn't work out as they planned. AI can help somebody calculate the scenario, but it can't sit across from a homeowner and notice the questions they're really asking beneath the surface. It's not about the interest rate. Maybe they're afraid their children will think they made a bad decision. Maybe they're embarrassed that they need the money. Maybe they've spent their entire life believing that a successful person pays off their mortgage, and now we're asking them to think about home equity completely differently, and it's challenging for them. If we only answer the literal questions, we might completely miss the actual conversation. And I think the professionals who are going to thrive in this business into the foreseeable future are the ones who become really good at hearing the question and emotion beneath the questions. People make decisions on emotion and back it up with logic. Now, when we talk about emotional intelligence, it can sound a little bit soft, right? But emotional intelligence is really just the ability to understand and manage emotions, both in ourselves and in the people around us. And that starts with us. Have you ever noticed how differently you handle a client conversation? If you're really stressed or tired or frustrated or just had a really bad sales call and now you're on the next one? Maybe you've had 5 things go wrong that morning. Your phone is ringing, the processor needs something, and you have 42 unanswered emails. I know, I've been there. And then the client calls, the client that is scared, and asks you the same question that you've already answered 3 times. In that moment, you may know exactly what the client needs, and your ability to deliver that information well is completely dependent on if you're going to get that loan or not, if you're going to be able to help that person. When we're overwhelmed, we tend to listen less and interrupt more. We become more focused on solving the problem instead of understanding the person. And people feel that. There's a disconnect. One of the simplest tools we recently practiced in our reverse mortgage mastermind on Wednesdays was box breathing. It's incredibly simple and incredibly effective. So you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and then you repeat 4 times. So you create a box with your boxes. I actually like to imagine a little box drawing in my mind. So I'll go breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, breathe in. And I'll even give it a color sometimes. Red if I'm angry, blue if I'm sad, yellow if I just really need some patience and a breather. It sounds incredibly simple. It almost sounds ridiculous, right? Try it. What you're actually doing is creating a little bit of space between what's happening to you and how you respond. In that space, your brain works better to manage your emotions. Variations of box breathing are used by military personnel, including special ops forces and other high-stress professionals, to stay calm and focused under pressure. The goal isn't to eliminate the stress, it's to be able to keep your brain thinking clearly enough to make good decisions despite the stress. It can help create a pause before responding to a stress situation and have completely different outcomes than if you hadn't done it. One of the places I've actually learned the most about this has nothing to do with mortgages. It's parenting. Many of you may relate. My kids have taught me a lot about communication. One thing I started doing is repeating back almost verbatim what they say before trying to address what it is they're saying. So if one of my kids is upset and says, "She took my toy," Instead of immediately going, well, you need to share, or whatever you're going to respond, I always repeat it back. You're really upset because you're playing with that toy and she took it, right? You'd almost see their eyes change and go, yeah. It's amazing how often the intensity just calms down and now we can clearly communicate. Because before somebody's ready for a solution, they need to make sure you understand what the problem is. And adults aren't really that different. A client says, I'm worried about how much interest this loan could accumulate. And your instincts may be to explain the math immediately, go into appreciation rate and go into how those things work. I get it. I've done it. That's why I'm here talking about how not to do it. It sounds like what you're really concerned about is making sure that you don't make a decision today that could negatively affect you later on. Is that right? Now we're having a totally different conversation. We're still going to have to explain the math, but at least we've zeroed in on what the thing is that they care about most. We can address it. Now the person knows that we understand the question, and now we can actually answer it. This is the basics of how trust is built. And I don't think you need some complicated communication system to be better at this. You can start small. I encourage you to. Listen a little longer before offering the solution to your clients, or, my favorite, practice at home with your family and friends. Repeat back what you heard. Ask one more question to understand, and get curious about what someone might be feeling, not just what they're saying. Pay attention to your own emotional state when you walk into an important conversation. Those small changes can compound big time over time. Listen, AI is going to continue to get better. We all know that. And consumers are going to have access to more and more information. They're going to research us. So you have to know your stuff so you are in alignment. Then it's really important that when they're going to ask AI to analyze the options we give them, that we are also addressing the emotion, because that's something that AI can't do. And I think that's a good thing. I think that gives us a competitive advantage and job insurance into the future. Of course, you have to know your stuff, but our value is evolving as the world evolves. Our value is in helping people understand what information means for their life. And the future belongs to professionals who can do both, technical expertise and the human connection, knowledge and empathy, strategy, advice, and trust. And AI may help a homeowner understand their options. They can definitely do the math. But when the decision is complicated, emotional, deeply personal, multifaceted, people will still want someone they trust to help them move forward. And I suspect they always will. I'm Christina Harmes, Certified Reverse Mortgage Professional. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.